Journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is public relations. George Orwell. So, welcome everyone to another episode of Crisp Before Coffee. And today I'd like to talk about, with my plethora of guests, we've got quite a number of people, the dichotomy between journalism and public relations. I was kind of inspired to do the beginning of this show on this article the other day from Ethan Zuckerman on The Atlantic, the guy that invented the pop-up ad, actually publicly apologizing for his invention. And at the bottom of the article, he actually says what we've been saying on this channel for quite some time, which is that we need to rethink the monetization of the internet. And a lot of comments were on the article, particularly people saying that people always want free content, but people, just end up taking the content for free and then not paying for it. And we want to know from our guest today, and what you think in the questions in the bottom left-hand corner of this video, how we should change the culture with something like Bitcoin. So today I'm joined by some of the regulars. I've got Nick, Theo, Jamie. Say hi, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
And we also have a new guest who's one of our audience members, traditionally, Anna. Hello, Anna.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hello. So it's a bit of a German special because we've got Theo and Anna, and then coming in from California, we've got Thomas Hunt.
Hey.
Hello. And of course, you are the most important visitor on the show. So yeah, just again, bottom left-hand corner of this video, you can have your say. So what's interesting about this is this George Orwell quote. What do you guys make of it? Right, this to me feels like the direct opposite of what we've ended up creating, where when you go on Twitter, all you get is a filter bubble. You only see what someone else wants you to see. You don't actually get to hear the truth. And his point was that journalism, when done well, is saying something that someone else doesn't want you to say.
It reminds me of the way the press stay in the free speech zone now. And last night I was watching the Ferguson riots, or whatever you want to call it. That's probably not the right word, but I was watching the Ferguson situation, and I noticed that the protesters were hiding amongst the journalists, trying to be free that way, and the cops were running in phalanxes of triangles, grabbing the people that they thought were not journalists and pulling them aside. The journalists were also pretty compliant, agreeing to move wherever the cops wanted them to move. So it was questionable whether they were reporting things people didn't want to hear. It also, at one point, and this is pretty serious if you want to go back and watch the CNN coverage, it looks like the protesters had found someone who they thought was an agent provocateur, someone sent in to rile up the protest, and they had surrounded him. They had an InfoWars guy there with a camera on him. The guy clearly didn't want to be filmed. He was holding his hands over his face, and CNN commentary said nothing about this. They didn't identify the person as a possible agent provocateur. They didn't say that, yes, there was only one water bottle thrown from the crowd last night before the police started moving in and breaking down the allegedly peaceful and legal protest under the Constitution. And we don't know who threw that water bottle. We don't know who's been throwing these Molotov cocktails. We don't know because the media is not really reporting on it.
So apparently the First Amendment is actually an area now. Is that right, Jamie? Is the First Amendment an area?
Yeah, the First Amendment of the Constitution is what covers the freedom of speech in America and freedom of the press and all of that. And that the Constitution is supposed to be the supreme law of the land in the United States of America. And if, Nick had posted some stuff on Twitter last night, which I'll let Nick say that, where if they're not allowing the Constitution, if it's a Constitution-free zone, then they're not bound by the Constitution, then the Constitution has no authority. And I don't know if I really said that correctly, but Nick, why don't you say what you meant?
Basically, if you can't claim your authority derives from the supreme law of the land and then ignore the limitations the supreme law of the land sets on you. That's just throwing it out the window, and you basically say, there's no more authority. Our authority comes from gunpoint. It doesn't come from this law. It doesn't come from legislation that we all agree on. It comes from the gunpoint. And to be honest, that's what I've been saying for a long time, and people have been saying this for hundreds of years now in the United States, that there is no more Constitution. It has never stopped infringements upon itself. It has never stopped, anybody from overstepping the bounds. Just look at when, if Congress, if they write legislation that is later deemed unconstitutional, none of them get fired. None of them go to jail. None of them have any repercussions other than the law gets overturned. But that's already done the fucking damage, right? Like, they've already trampled on their limitations. So if they want to kick out the First Amendment, then they kick out the rest of the Constitution, because that's where it all starts anyways.
And going back to the issue of the press, it's one of those deals where you see all the time, it almost seems like they have a script. If you go from one channel to another, even between polar opposites of Fox and MSNBC or CNN, they have the same key words, police did this, and you'll have, and they, there's this rise in public dissatisfaction or whatever, and all the channels will be saying a rise in public dissatisfaction, and it's like this key phrase that they all catch on to, and then it's not really reporting, but it's going through this script that all the mainstream media wants to do, and then you have these people speculating on things that it's just gossip at that point on TV.
I think that going back to this original statement is that so-called journalism has become, especially on TV, it's more of entertainment. It's to monetize. It's about monetization, and that if you don't want to hear, or they think people don't want to hear uncomfortable things and be challenged, that's going to ruin the monetization of it. And I think that's part of the root thing. It's about monetizing journalism, and you can't do that if you're, reporting on challenging things. You want to have it entertainment value and maybe a shock value with some of this news that's going on right now, and presenting things that people might not want to hear is not the way to monetize at the moment. And so that's what we have. This is the result.
So did you guys see this last night? There was a group of people, I think mostly Americans, they would probably describe themselves as patriots, and they were pro-military and pro-police, who were trying to hijack the hashtag Ferguson Twitter feed with all of this kind of like authority rhetoric. And one of the things they did is that they got this sort of breaking news thing that Dorian Johnson, the key witness in the Mike Brown shooting, has now admitted that apparently, this is what they're alleging, he has now redacted his story or changed parts of his story to say that in fact Mike Brown did challenge the officer for his gun. I have no proof that this is true. The closest I could get to anything like a source was a Facebook page by an independent media source that won't tell us where they got the information from, only that they got it from a reputable other mainstream media source, which then question comes to mind as to why they haven't actually published it. And really this is about filtering. This is about getting other people to believe what you believe. I've got a particular worldview, and actually one tweeter I thought put it really well. I'm not sure which side he was coming down on, but in the whole story, but he says, my Ferguson Twitter feed, exactly like my dad, they have a meta-narrative that they cling to, and by God, no fact, no change will alter their view. In other words, what he's saying is that you already decide on what the world is like, and then you make the facts, meet that narrative.
Yeah, I think that's also what journalism or the media is doing. It's helping people, making people feel good. That just confirms their worldview, and that's kind of like a form of entertainment for them, maybe. But I think that guy had a really good point, and I think we all need to think about that.
So one of the proposed solutions is this article the other day which is slightly ironic. ChangeTip wants to kill clickbait with social Bitcoin micropayments, with a bit of clickbait. Like, this in itself is actually clickbait. If you look at the definition of what clickbait is, it's a link that is made to look enticing so that you want to click on it. And then we get taken to a public relations managed article in TechCrunch, which gets an awful lot of views and has, you know, very high on the Alexa rankings. This has been written by a journalist, Natasha Lomas, and yet this isn't really journalism. This is essentially a staged interview. Looks like it's been set up by a PR company, designed to make ChangeTip look good. Now, what am I not saying? ChangeTip is a very, very, very good service. I'm not saying that it's not a good service, and I use it and I promote it, and I would encourage you to do the same. What I'm saying is that, but even though the management at ChangeTip are saying they want to spell the end of this kind of meta-narrative where people just get you to click on things that they've either been told or paid to tell you, or something that they want you to believe, they actually want a value for value exchange where good quality, you know, content actually gets paid for, so that you get a more honest representation online of information in the world. And one of the interesting things that I kind of thought about was, like, take for example this Twitter account, right? I subscribe to this. It's got lots of really interesting practical life advice. I worked out that if you paid this Twitter account 25 cents per month just to kind of have it in your feed, it would be a voluntary payment. Even if you slashed their followers down from 18,000 down to 4,000, that would net the company running this about $1,100 per month in payment. And all you would have to do, if like me you're a coffee drinker, is sacrifice one coffee every 4 months in order to offset that payment. So is the answer here, what I'm interested in getting to know, maybe Anna you can talk about this, is what I call unconscious discretionary payments. Like people who just spend money on things without really thinking about what they're spending the money on. That if you just change that behavior altogether, if I didn't buy that latte every day from Starbucks or whatever, I would be that much better off that I could then use that money for something more helpful and productive.
Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of things you value. I mean, the problem we had before, what we're talking about before, that information, journalism, you know, if you are kind of expected to consume it without paying for it, then you kind of, yeah, get the thing that you have advertisement coming with it, or that it's financed by a company or a political party or something like that, so that the journalism is not really, yeah, it has its perspective, and of course it says well, the sponsor.
Oh no, we're losing. Have we lost Anna? Oh, we have, and she was making such a good point, and her connection was really, really good before the show when we were preparing as well. Yeah. So does anyone else? Tom?
It must be different when it's streaming live. It must be different for the Google, because it seemed like it did work before the show. So there is some, or maybe she just had a temporary internet problem. But I think it's very sad that ChangeTip is choosing to sell their service with a negative. I think that the idea of bringing nano payments to creators is a better idea than the idea of killing clickbait. I think if you take a creator who's making videos already, making tweets, making news articles, whatever you particularly value, photoshops, images, video editing, whatever you think is cool, and you tipping that is more powerful than this negative idea of killing clickbait or whatever they think they're going to do.
Well, I think you've just got to make the money disappear, right? The transaction just has to disappear from your view. I really like what Patreon is doing at the moment, where they're allowing you to front load your identity. So you're saying, okay, I'm going to invest $30 a month in paying for content online, and I want it to be distributed over this range of people on the internet, because I really believe what they believe. I want to see more of that. I want them to sustain that. At the moment, there's a massive chasm between the amount of rent that my landlord can exert on me and the amount of rent I can exert on my audience on the internet. And that's not because my audience on the internet are bad people and they don't want to pay for things because they're greedy and stuff. That's just because of the physical economics of it, right? that's just because you don't have that ability. Anna is back.
Hi.
Talk to us, Anna. Hello.
Oh, what did I miss?
Oh, everything. We pretty much solved the whole problem whilst you were gone. No, tell us a little bit about what you do as well. Like, what is your business?
Yeah, my business. I started my own little business last year. I'm actually helping freelancers or self-employed people in Berlin.
No, we're not having a lot of luck.
Yes. You want to follow regulations. Yeah, and my clients are.
We're going to have to take over again. So basically, I think Anna is essentially helping people. You're helping people do their finances and their bookkeeping and stuff like that.
Yeah, their finances, bookkeeping, but also just organizing their stuff. Hopefully, because yeah, I think it really helps you also to get a better overview over your business expenses and everything. And yes, people tend to spend probably more than they can afford or more than is necessary. Same goes for business expenses too. You know, think, oh, I can put an ad on here, and I have some flyers, and I need some new business cards, and I have to polish up my website, so I'm going to pay a website developer. And I think a lot of people trying to start their new business on their own maybe fail because they underestimate not only the expenses but also the amount of handling and caretaking of all those things that come along with it. So yeah, I'm trying to make it easier for them and try to explain how to see through, how to do their taxes and things like that, what's needed, what's necessary, and how do they get on the safe side with all their paperwork. Yeah.
So we kind of need like a mint.com to take on Bitcoin, right? So that people can actually track that privately and confidentially, of course, sort of free from any kind of government surveillance, how to track their spending habits. Because at the moment, the modern day markets rest on the assumption that people necessarily make good decisions about what they spend their money on. And I suppose what I'm saying is we actually don't, not at least without a little bit of prompting.
That's what Will, our friend Will, his project with Topiki.com, I believe it is a financial planning deal that web service that tracks your spending.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. So you will be able to read in all your public keys. So you get an overview over all your wallets, you know, that ChangeTip wallet you have there, and that paper wallet you got there, and that 5 wallets on your phone that you've created once and things like that. And you will be able to edit, to make some entries, to you know, to put some notes to your transactions, which are not entered in the blockchain, but just kind of for your own personal record. And I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah.
But how are we going to keep that safe? Like I was at a Bitcoin meetup last night that's organised by CoinScrum. One of the co-organisers of the London Bitcoin meetup, and we were helping people get on board with Bitcoin for the first time, helping them set up wallets, telling them how to generate safe passwords, how to do paper backups, that kind of thing. And one of the interesting things that came up in our conversation was the way that we're going to have to reinvent the internet now that we have this kind of type of cryptography and we've got all this sensitive information that is persisted on network-enabled devices like our telephone, mobile phones now contain everything about us, that a search and seizure is tantamount to going through your house when you actually look at someone's phone, because it contains probably more sensitive information than your house does these days. And how that's radically changed, and that now we've got these kind of blockchain technologies, it's occurred to us that we're going to have to reinvent Twitter, we're going to have to reinvent Facebook, we're going to have to fundamentally change it so that the database doesn't reside on a private server somewhere where you've got a few elite developers that have the password, and every now and again the CIA is allowed to take a copy of it. I mean, all you're doing is, when you're doing this tracking of your spending and you're notarizing all your payments, you're just creating a honeypot for someone to come in and, you know, monetize that. They could sell that to advertisers, couldn't they?
What I'm looking for too are projects like MadeSafe. I'm really hoping they come out with a public beta here pretty soon, or anybody that comes out with a peer-to-peer network sharing thing that you can make a website and things like that that have end-to-end encryption where it'll be distributed and you can portion off a part of your hard drive and just store stuff that's chopped up on the internet. I think Nick and I were talking about that privately one day, and I think that's the only way we're going to be able to survive in the upcoming world. The thing about the blockchain that worries me is it's all public. Even though it's encrypted, it's a permanent record there for all time. It had the blockchain, and it was, if you could do transactions in a private manner, if you had the choice of doing them public or on an encrypted network that was hidden, so if like there were two blockchains, one that was on the hidden network and then one that was on the regular blockchain that we have now, I think that would be a great option.
I think that if the new apps that come out to help you track all your addresses, if the platform is built in a way similar to blockchain.info where they don't have your password and they don't have your information, then you know, you can't really monetize that per se. You see what I mean? So I think that's an okay way to do it. If it's a trustless platform, then so blockchain info doesn't know, or I hope they don't know, where I'm sending my bitcoins, if I'm using them for sports betting or trading or whatever. And then I think they just show the few ads they have to everybody, you know, and they assume that everybody, that's of general interest, and they don't monetize. They don't say, okay, this is Theo logging into his blockchain info account, and he's a whale, so we're going to show him these ads. So they don't monetize it. So I think that I don't want to speak for Will because I don't know the details of the platform, but I'm assuming that it's built like that or similar to where they don't know exactly what you're doing with the tracked addresses, so that it's going to be hard for them to monetize it in the traditional sense of, you know, what get a profile of your spending, and that you get the profile of your own spending is the point.
Well, remember,
well, just to make a comment, they could build an advertising profile off of you without having to know any personal information about you whatsoever. Like that's something we do where I work, is we try to keep as much of the personal stuff away from people as we build a profile on them for, you know, sending them surveys or things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Tom's actually brought up Tuur. So what I want to remember is that
say on their website that they take the public keys. So they'll have your public key. So if you do spend Bitcoin, they'll have all that information based upon your public key.
And now that database has a premium on it. It's now got a bounty on it where a hacker can now is incentivized to hack that database. Whatever happened to having root level access to your own hardware that was under your own custody in your own physical environment and running it from there? Why do we always have to outsource everything to a server in the cloud now?
Well, that's not how everything started, right? Everything started with workstations and client server stuff. So, I mean, there used to be people who just sit down at a terminal and all they had was a keyboard and a monitor, you know?
Mm.
So we seem to be going back, but that's where we're going back to. It's a service
Well,
computing
and
as a
everyone needs
service.
to encrypt and separate their data, so services like this are honeypots, like you said. And Mint does work with Coinbase, but of course it's not a good idea to just keep all your Bitcoins in one big Coinbase account. As we've seen over and over again, hackers come in and they empty out that entire Coinbase account.
Well,
So,
that's what I think too is so creepy with you got Google Plus, you got Facebook, and you got Twitter now. Just about any website that you go to, oh, just you can sign up for an account here. Just add it to your Facebook account or your Twitter account or whatever with one click, and then it says, oh, we're going to take all this information from you, and everybody just says, oh, okay. And now, like this new Facebook chat app or whatever for the phone, oh yeah, it's going to just take random pictures with your phone. And it's like people don't read these things, and it's damn scary what personal information they can take from you.
What was interesting though at the meetup last night, this is one of the pictures I took. I was actually a lot busier than this. This was right at the beginning. Is we had this lady who came to us who says that she's taken early retirement and she is now spending her spare time learning about Bitcoin. She did not look like she had been prompted to turn up. She turned up of her own volition. She brought a relative with her and she sat with us and we were talking through. She showed remarkable intuition. Like she just knew, she didn't know very much about Bitcoin and the blockchain, but she had a sense that this is the way things were going to go and she needed to know about it, right? If she was going to spend her retirement in anything like some kind of sanity. So she had actually, one of her last jobs was setting up an app for the iPad that helps you learn about London and all the different boroughs by using it as a jigsaw. It's called London Jigsaw. And she was talking to us, and when I was telling her about offline wallets and having a separate computer and it doesn't touch the internet, she was like, wow, you know, she was actually genuinely interested. She really she got it. She didn't like get it in the sense that she needed some time to go away and percolate it like in her mind. But when we were describing to her the relationship between the public and private key and that you can actually keep these keys offline separate from an internet connection, she was going, oh well, that's really clever, you know, that's a really good idea. And she was actually then inspired to go off and look into it herself rather than us just disseminating information and just telling her what to think. I think that she kind of got it, and this is what I've been trying to tell people for some time now, that it actually isn't a case of just persuading people into thinking what you want them to think. It's just about helping them to understand why this is so damn interesting. And you know, being interested is what makes the world go round, right? Being interested is how you appear interesting to other people. And when you share with someone your love and your inspiration of a particular subject like this, they can kind of share in that as well.
I think for most people it's very difficult to find a good balance between keeping things in your own hands, yeah, like taking care of my private keys and having my Bitcoins stored at home, and the comfort or the easy handling of just handing it over to somebody else and taking care of things. So, for example, I prefer having my Bitcoins here at home rather than putting it on an exchange. But for my data, for example, yes, I do put it in a cloud storage because I'm so afraid that I might just accidentally spill my coffee over my computer and everything might be lost. And yeah, from that I'm taking the risk of somebody getting access to it, or somebody, if I'm kind of spending website that someone use it to present me with some advertisements. Yeah, so there's always, I see there's always difficult to keep the balance between those two, and I think a lot of people are having trouble with that. As far as I know, is also for many people a reason not to engage too much in cold storage, because you know it's an effort they gotta take. They gotta at least watch a good tutorial video. Thanks, Tom, for that. To learn how to do it, and then you gotta spend some time to actually do it. And of course, it's way easier just to have your Bitcoins on Coinbase or wherever and just trust somebody else to take care of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And when you trust someone else, they're acting as the bank for you. When you have your own keys, your own private keys, you're your own wallet and you're your own bank. So you do have to secure them. You do have to watch a video, learn how to do the paper wallets if you want to be your own bank. It's not just easy. Then you're an easy bank to rob. So.
yeah, I just want to take this moment to do a big shout out to Seafarer124, who gave me a very, very generous donation of half a Bitcoin last week. And I just want to say, look, if you're a millionaire and maybe you're watching this show and you look down in the description below and you see my Bitcoin address and you think, hey, what's 4,000 Bitcoins to a millionaire, right? And so maybe you're just sitting there and you're thinking, I could just do it. I could just send Chris 4,000 Bitcoins without any editorial control whatsoever. Or I could just send it, and then once I've sent it, I can't do anything about it. It would be like a big adventure. You'd be taking this big, exciting adventure, and then I'd be able to spend it on, like, decentralize the world and be getting the blockchain out to developing countries. It'd be amazing. We could do all that stuff. No, but seriously, thank you very much to all those who do donate to the show. You really make it worthwhile. I'm terrible at asking for money, so I'm going to stop right now because I find it very embarrassing. But we should definitely be trying to encourage people to pay for things on a voluntary basis, right? You don't pay for this because anyone put a gun to your head or anyone threatened to withdraw. Like, I don't say, right, I'm going to take this show off air unless someone pays me now, because I don't want to be like that. I want to do the show on its own merits. The show is a reward in itself. But what we're talking about is making this kind of activity sustainable in the long run, right? We're talking about actually saying we want to continue doing this, and the money isn't here so that we can all go off and have pina coladas on the beach and stuff like that. It's just because we want to keep on doing it.
That's true, Chris, and the price right now is showing some signs of recovery.
That's because we're on air, Tom. Yeah, I realized there's actually a correlation between us going on air and the Bitcoin price going up. Everyone gets more bullish when they see us go on air.
Looks like it's
spiked. We need to make a chart for that, like the on-air time and then the price, and then we can see if there's a good correlation. We can get our own algorithm, World Crypto Network algorithm going,
Volume?
It's probably
really good.
Algorithm. Right. Let's talk about. Let's segue now into Tuur Demeester, who writes a very famous newsletter, and he's a very popular pundit. I like him a lot. I've met him a couple of times at some conferences. The other day, I tweeted out. Well, actually, he tweeted out, but I'd already tweeted out from the World Crypto Network account that there was a mass sell-off on BTC-e yet again. It's not the first time that BTC-e seemed to have triggered a bunch of margin calls. BTC-e and some other trading platforms have what are called margin trading accounts, which is where you can borrow money to trade, and this creates a culture of speculation on the price, where you have a whole bunch of people, mostly men in their 20s and 30s, sat behind computer screens just making predictions on what the price of Bitcoin is going to do without actually, going outside and measuring the value of a Bitcoin against things like food and fuel and entertainment and stuff that you would normally spend your money on. It's just totally decontextualized, people sitting entirely divorced from the rest of the world, apparently pricing their sentiment into the market, even though that sentiment has nothing to do with day-to-day activities. So I sort of said, look, perhaps people should stop treating crypto like a slot machine and setting price targets, and of course I'm talking about him and Max Kaiser here, and we wouldn't be in this mess. Because the problem with these sharp downtrends in price is that it actually puts off regular people that don't want to spend all day looking at a computer screen watching candlestick charts go up and down, are actually disenfranchised by this. Now, Tuur then comes back and he says, look, traders bring liquidity to the market and allow for uniform prices. And I'm not disagreeing that we shouldn't have liquidity. I guess what I'm asking for is moderation, a little bit of reflection. Can we just step back from this and talk about it in an adult manner? Why are so many people doing this? I've lost everything and I'm saying goodbye. This guy lost $150,000. Goodbye. And then you get this from the developers, the people that are actually working on the code, that are actually building things that we're all going to find useful in the future. They're saying, look, could you stop coming to us and telling telling us we need to do more branding and more marketing. Like the developers of Litecoin or Feathercoin or any other coin, we're not here to make you rich, right? If you were going into these trades, not taking responsibility and just gambling on a hope and a prayer that maybe you could just be sitting back and let your money make your money for you, it's not up to the developers to then turn around when the price goes down and go, sorry everyone, that was our fault. No, it's not their fault. I don't know why this is such a difficult conversation. Every time we bring it up, we get into all this friction about people saying, but people have every right to gamble. Yes, people do have every right to gamble. But what I'm saying is that when 90% of your industry, well, that's an assumption I'm making, is it 90% of our industry, seems to be fixated on the price, that's not healthy. Now, one thing I did want to respond to before I go to the panel is Gabrielle Devine said it would be cool, he says, if we could turn off gravity at will too. The point is, though, that human culture does change. Like, you know, 2,500 years ago, people used to wash themselves in olive oil and wear wool every day in ancient Athens, right? We don't do that anymore because culture changes, but the laws of physics don't, or at least we haven't seen them change so far. Right? So in fact we do have the ability to look at what we're doing and how we're behaving and ask questions about whether or not we want to continue behaving in this way. What do you think? Why is this such a gambling heavy industry and why can't we bring this more into the real world?
I think it has to do with people still using their old mindset for the old world. They think they're going to be saved by somebody in the end. You know, someone's going to come back and bail them out. But I've been saying this for a couple months now. I think we're in the phase where the stupid money is getting bled out. Somebody who loses $150,000 and throws their hands up, I'm done, fuck this. That's stupid money. There's nothing has changed in the last 6 months. Really, the fundamentals, what has changed? The only thing that has gotten better is you can have more places to spend your Bitcoin or Litecoin. You have more exchanges. There's more people involved. So what did you lose? You lost imaginary money you didn't actually realize. Like, you're stupid, and that person is going to be one of the people who gets bled out. There used to be a term everybody used to say, oh, weak hands, weak hands. I think we should just call it stupid money now. It's just stupid money, and once all the stupid money's gone, they're going to come back in 6 months and be like, oh, I can't believe I got out, I need to get the fuck back in, and we'll repeat the cycle until, you know, everybody who's been inoculated to the stupid.
Yeah, Sean's Outpost had this great tweet. Bitcoin works at any price. We fed people at $35 and we fed people at $1,200. And it's a good point, no?
I agree. It's just people that want to blame somebody else for their own stupidity. And I almost wonder if a lot of these sob stories aren't plants by the regulating people that want to say, oh, look, we got all these people losing money at this. We got to get in there and regulate it.
Yes, that's my other concern, is that you've just got all these, what I would call just immature little boys just sat in their rooms and just trading all day, hoping that they can make some money for nothing. And then all this does is attract regulators.
And you were talking earlier how they're trading mainly on sentiment. They have a new tool at CoinDesk, and I'm not sure how valuable this tool is, but it's certainly new, that will quote-unquote track sentiment on a public opinion of the Bitcoin price. They have some kind of a company that's including advertisements at the bottom of your web browser in your iPhone. So if you see this little advertisement here, the importance of Bitcoin will increase, stay the same, decrease, then you're contributing to Coinbase's new quote-unquote sentiment index.
Right. So that, yeah, this is self-reporting. So obviously people can lie. The point that what was his name, Brett Scott, made in a recent article, which I'll pull up if I can in a minute, was that these traders are trading completely divorced from any real-world context. The people that should be pricing sentiment in are people that are outdoors day on day, buying food, buying groceries, paying to get into events with Bitcoin. That's the real price. That's the real measure of sacrifice, because what money does is money occupies the space between your spending decisions, right, and your commitments to work. It's the time sacrifice of money was what was created by the prostitutes in Rome as a way of reaching a fair market price for their services, okay? They needed a way to get all their clients to agree on paying them some money. They couldn't do it by like itemizing like what they did. Like, how do you measure something like that anyway? When someone asked me to write a blog post, how do I measure the sacrifice that I make? What it came down to was your time was the best measure of that sacrifice. So people charge by the hour, or they charge on aggregate over the day or the week or the job lot. That was what we agreed that we were going to do. And the point that Brett Scott was making in his article was that when you get price sentiments and discovery being made by men in suits in air-conditioned buildings in city centres, that is completely separate from our day-to-day activities. And what you end up with is an arbitrary figure set by a very small percentage of the population that isn't representative of everyone as a whole. Jamie?
Well, to put it in perspective, let's say like this guy that lost $150,000. If that's true, I paid $65,000 for my house that I live in here, and that was in 2002. So that's nearly 2.5 times the value of what I paid for my house. And I mean, this guy was gambling with that much money. And if he did it on margin trading is borrowing money from a bank on interest to gamble with. That's what it is. And, you know, for people that don't know what margin trading is, it's like doubling down on your stupidity.
That is that's very funny.
I like that. Doubling down on your stupidity. That's great.
That's a quote. Could someone please timestamp that in the comments below? That's very good. And we welcome Victoria. Victoria, hello.
Hi.
Your sound works. Hooray.
Yay. Yeah, I had to restart my computer.
Oh, that always works. It's the age-old IT trick. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? It solves 90%
I hadn't tried it, so I did, and now I'm here. So thank you for inviting me in.
No, thank you for joining us. So we're talking about the price and the price slip down. This is in spite of the fact that the news had been very positive. I will pull it up in a minute, but there was a really good post on Our Bitcoin where someone very intelligent said, you don't buy on good news, you sell on the news. And this is what a lot of the traders are doing, is that you buy on the rumor, you sell on the news. And the point that I suppose I've been trying to get people's response to is that a lot of the price of these cryptocurrencies is set by an arbitrary group of people, mostly young men in their bedrooms on their own, that are totally divorced from the real world.
Yeah, I was hearing about that. Yeah, it's interesting. I just see when the price goes down, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I'll just put a little bit more in.
Well, this is, so Nick had noticed this, and I'd noticed it as well, is that actually we have seen a lot more inbound interest in Bitcoin since the price is going down because people perceive it as a bargain.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it was 1,200 in January, and it's less than half now.
But why?
Yeah, it's like when a department store has a sale on clothes or something. You know, it's like, yeah, you can get Bitcoin now at 20% off.
Well, when you come from a financial background, that's how we're taught to look at the stock market, right? It's when it's going down, you buy when it's going down. You buy on fear, right? And then you sell when other people are getting a little excited about it. A lot of people think, okay, it's going down. I don't want to lose anymore, so I'm going to sell out now so I don't lose anymore. But there's always a transaction, so someone's buying. So who's buying and why are they buying? So when I see the price going down, I get excited. I don't get upset. But of course, have to consider the financial planning aspect as well. I think I just there we go.
The downs are getting getting higher anyway, even from a technical point of view. So all these like flash crashes, what they're calling them on BTC-e. I mean, let's see. I think it was in February we had one. It went all the way down to like 100 and something one day, and that started.
Was on Box. That was not on any of respectable exchange.
No, it was on BTC-e. I have it here on the chart.
Oh yes, no, sorry, you're right. No, you're right.
I on a screen share, what I'm looking at, and you can even see that even these weird, questionable crashes are getting a little bit higher. Here's this one goes all the way down to 100 and something, and then this is the last one over here that happened in the summer, 315. And down here in the middle is when it was really low this year around March and April. And you see that it's not going below that point. There's no reason to panic. But yeah, I guess that it was triggered by margin trading, or someone had some someone with a whole lot of Bitcoin had some stop losses set up.
Right, we should say what margin calls are actually. So margin calls are when the exchange force you to sell because you can't cover your losses. That's what happens. You're borrowing money off the exchange, but they will only let you borrow so much. And if you're asleep and the price drops, they will automatically sell your coins to cover your losses, even though you're asleep. So you'll wake up and you've suddenly lost, 100 grand overnight because the exchange sold them for you.
Right. You hope that you win, and if you win enough, then you can pay it back.
Yeah. Now this is this is a Fibonacci chart that I've drawn on the long-term trend. This is Bitstamp going back over a few years. This was the rise up in July, sort of April 2013, and that's when I think most of us started getting most vocal, I guess. And one of the interesting things here is this is $2 from back in 2011 when it rose up to 30 and crashed all the way back down. This is also a logarithmic chart. I'm on bitcoinwisdom.com. It's a logarithmic chart because I think that's a more honest representation of the price movements. And what you actually see here, looking, this is a 3-day, is actually we are touching these Fibonacci bars. Like we're doing it quite neatly. So
Yeah,
it looks as though we have rebounded off of this sort of 420 bottom.
I'd like to point out, if you look at the volume is good right now. We need it to stay at like a little bit higher level than it is right now. Usually it dips down in the morning. It'll pick up in the next couple hours. But if we could keep, probably 80 to 100,000 coins going back and forth, the rally will probably keep continuing back up.
So that's an interesting point that Nick makes. If you look here where my cursor is down at the bottom, so the volume is here, which is actually at about the same level as where we were on the rise up to 260 back in 2013. Now, we really got a kickoff when we started rising up to 1200, but remember that rise, that so-called China rise up to 1200, was a lot of manipulation on GOX, right? We know that because of the Willie report.
Yep.
So, in fact, are people really just thinking, well, look, if that was all just faked anyway, then really these coins are overvalued? I think a lot of people are probably putting their buy orders in around 420, 400, hoping that it will drop down and get cheaper coins, no?
Yeah, I think that. I'll go on, Victoria.
No, I was just saying it makes sense. I mean, I don't actually look at the price very much, but obviously there's a lot of manipulation going on, has been going on for a while.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea to put some buy orders in at 420, or you could, figure out some other, or a little bit above 420, because everyone's looking at the same chart, so you don't want to put your buy order where everyone else is going to put it. But yeah, I mean, no one needs to panic. Like I said, nothing looks, like we're going nuclear here or anything. And you said it's really going back up quite quickly right now. So I think this was just someone, like Jamie said, someone doubling down on some stupid money and doing some really dumb trades and just making a little bit of a crash, and everyone freaked out a little bit, and the price went down. It'll go right back up. Look at all the past crashes. They all go back up eventually because a lot of the crashes were not based on like what you're talking about. They're not based on real life prices. They're not based on how much Bitcoin do I need to buy a beer, or how much Bitcoin do I need to buy, a hamburger and French fries or whatever, and that's what it needs to be based on, real valuable. So yeah, okay, Nick is saying until the fundamentals change. Well, yeah, the fundamentals haven't changed in my opinion, and I think that more and more people are interested in Bitcoin, more people are adapting, and I don't have any statistics, but I think more and more people are using it also to buy real life stuff. I mean, you got Overstock and all these other companies. So, in my opinion, it needs to be used in real life, and we need to buy stuff with Bitcoin and not only speculate with it. I don't want to say speculation is bad, or I don't want to see trading is bad, or even margin trading. But I think margin trading is pretty stupid.
Okay, Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm always a little bit amused when the price changes and everybody goes, "I know I should have bought more. I should have sold earlier. I need to buy more. No, I don't have any money. Whatever." Everybody's always, no matter what the price, everybody's always regretting they should have done something differently. I'm watching the price, but I'm not really emotionally attached to it. Well, the beginning of last year, I did buy some Bitcoin myself, but after that, I earned my Bitcoins through my work.
That's actually probably the best way
which
to
a
do
lot
it.
more than just buying them. Exchange. Yes.
More connection issues.
Yes. And for me, it's like, so, am I here? Can you hear me? Am I back on?
You're cutting out a little bit. You can always try turning your video off, and that might help with the bandwidth.
I do. Do that. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go ahead.
I think what I was aiming at, what was it? I wanted to say, if Bitcoin would go south and to zero right now, I wouldn't have any financial loss. I feel very, very sorry for people who actually lose money, but I would not. And if people lose money, yeah, I do feel sorry, but nobody should get involved over their heads. And if Bitcoin survives in the long-term run, we will see those price fluctuations, the so-called volatility we have now in the long-time run. There will just be very, very tiny peaks on the chart.
Well, it comes back to financial planning as well, right? If you look at this as a speculative vehicle, which as a financial planner it would be, as it is volatile, it's in its infancy, you should have, like your insurance covered, your cash on hand covered for emergencies, your basic investments, and then at the top, Bitcoin would be a speculative vehicle. So like Anna was saying, if you lose anything, hopefully you wouldn't lose everything. But of course, we do have people in this community who live completely on Bitcoin, right? They earn their money in Bitcoin, they pay for things in Bitcoin. So when the price goes up and down, it impacts them heavily. So it's a hard thing from a financial background, because if you believe in the philosophy and the premise of Bitcoin and why we shouldn't be using banks, you want to go all into Bitcoin. But then when you see this kind of speculation, you hear about this kind of corruption with places like Mt. Gox, the bot trading and all this kind of stuff. It makes you step back a little bit and say, am I actually getting involved in a different system, or is this the exact same people just moving into a nascent system and manipulating it? Right. So I still treat Bitcoin, I earn Bitcoin, I have a lot of Bitcoin, I treat it as a speculative vehicle. I don't even look at the price. I have no idea. I see it and I'm like, whoa, 460, okay, maybe I'll put a little bit more of my cash in now because I believe in it. But it makes you wonder, right? Like, is this actually different than what's going on in the other markets?
The principal difference is that at least we can see the manipulation.
Yes.
Because everything is honestly represented in the blockchain. And I'll keep saying this, that when Mt. Gox happened, we did not make the same mistake that the banks made, which is bailing out. Mt. Gox was not bailed out. And you had everyone acting like a detective. Everyone was comparing how much they had in there. People were scrutinizing the blockchain. The problem with regulators is they have the monopoly on the evidence. They have the evidence locked inside of their walls. But now we've all got it.
They can't be trusted. And that's the thing with this, is it's trustless, right? So you can't trust these people. So I think what we have to do here is educate people on, don't leave your stuff in exchanges. If you don't know this already, where have you been? Like, don't leave your stuff in exchanges. No.
I think it's a lot of people just making the same mistakes that have been made in like the traditional systems. Like, we're fast forwarding light speed through all the scams and stuff that came along with Wall Street and et cetera, et cetera. And once we get to like the end point, all of those have expired, we'll get to see some new fantastic scams and hacks and all sorts of neat things that are going to affect people.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think too, oh, there's no regulation. I'm going to go in there and pull these scams because there's no regulation. And then on the other side of the coin, there's people saying, well, there's these guys pulling these scams, we got to have regulation. And then there's guys like a lot of us saying, well, these guys are going to get weeded out that are pulling the scams, and we don't want regulation because we don't want regulations. They're not needed.
Yeah.
Well, so let's fight back against these speculators and let's be more interesting than them. Anna, what are you working on with this Girls' Night Out thing?
Yeah, I just said I gotta drop out in a minute because I'm leaving for Berlin Bitcoin Girls Night Out. Yeah, we started in May, and since then we had a monthly meetup only for women here in Berlin, which turns out to be awesome. So the feedback we got was really, really amazing. A lot of women came that haven't been to any other community meetings before, and they said it's awesome, you know, just the atmosphere is different and you feel a little bit more comfortable if there's only girls around, and they came with their questions and everything. And yeah, so the next one is taking place like in an hour or so. And if you're watching and in Berlin, and if you are female.
Where can we find out more about it? Where can people go?
This is only the Berlin group. We just have a Facebook event for that. We're building up the Berlin Bitcoin Center website currently. That's in development, and yeah, we're going to include all the events in there. But for now, it's only a Facebook event we have. Yeah.
But there's an international effort, because I also see Michelle Seven talking about it on Twitter. So I guess you guys have like Google Hangouts and stuff, no?
Yeah, that's Victoria can tell you more about it also. And yeah, that's an international group we have on yeah, via Google, and we have Hangouts there, and that's really our secure space where we yeah, where we're not letting anybody in.
No, I like it.
Talking about you behind your back. No.
Yeah. So a bit of positive discrimination. What do you, Victoria, tell us about positive discrimination.
Actually, I posted something on Google Plus at one point talking about how I was going to have a GNO, and this one guy got really upset with me. He's like, "You're discriminating against men," and I was like, "Well, if you want to come, you can come. I mean, I'm not. It's not supposed to be about women or about men. It's just working in finance. Like, women feel more comfortable sometimes talking about their fears or their lack of knowledge in it. They can be intimidated by tech. They can be intimidated by finance. It's just, I mean, it's just changing. We're seeing a lot more women get involved in engineering, that kind of thing. But it's just, you know, girls' nights out, boys' nights out, whatever, do your thing. It's, I don't know, speaking
so
with
apparently there's an event in London in October, and I'm all for it. But can a guy turn up if he brings a female friend and like introduces someone to Bitcoin? Could that be like your ticket in as a guy, that you can only come if you bring a female friend of yours that you want to introduce to Bitcoin?
Anna, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm muted. I think the London one is also going to be like the Berlin one. Actually, only for ladies. So if you want to bring a friend who's interested, just drop her off. You know, she's probably a bit grown up and she can handle herself, most likely. And yeah, on the Berlin event, they were towards the end. The boys were coming, yeah, and wanted to join us. But no, actually, it's girls only. We got a lot of other events here in Berlin, a lot of mixed events, and yeah, for intimidated men, there's the Bitcoin Lab each first Thursday in the month. So.
Oh, good. I was going to tell her to bring down that wall.
Well, we can have breakout. We can have like breakout events afterwards. Like I think that it's not really discrimination if it's granular. Like if you're talking about one evening where it's just for a girls' night out, how's that any difference to an office party where only employees of that company turn up? It's no different.
I don't really have big issues with discrimination anyways. I just don't like when people who discriminate complain about discrimination as well. It's like, well, fuck, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, and it's not hurting anyone.
This guy on Google Plus was like, "Oh, well, fine, then have your girls' night out. Then I'm going to go back and golf with all my guy friends." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, it's all good. So that was interesting.
Well, Anna, thank you very much for coming on. That was really good to hear from you. We should have you on again.
Bye, Anna.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm going to run. I'm going to say hello to the girls, and you have a lot of fun. And Victoria, we're going to talk to you soon.
Yeah, well,
very good.
Bye, Anna.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Chris.
No, you're welcome. Have a good time tonight.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye. So we should go to some questions as well. If you go to the Q&A tab on your left, for those of you that are on the actual show, and for everyone else, bottom left-hand corner of this video, you can go to the Q&A. We had some points by Dan Gould, and I'm not catching up on them because he's had a lot of interesting things to say. So he said, yes, let me just pull this one up. The big bad regulator wolf huffed and puffed and could not blow down the Bitcoin brick house. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. But I still feel like what we're getting at the moment, what came up in our meetup last night was that you're getting a lot of early adopters into Bitcoin who understand the underlying fundamentals, who don't like the way the newer adopters of Bitcoin are taking it into the regulatory capture space. So you're getting a lot of entrepreneurs that are just seeing Bitcoin as an opportunity that don't necessarily understand the single history principle of the blockchain, where you get the whole world to agree on one narrative. Because at the moment what we have is, really, when you're borrowing money, all you're really doing is spending money out of sequence. That was what Satoshi, one of Satoshi's insights, was that what you're doing is you've got lots of people all over the world spending money out of order. They're spending money that they don't have yet. That's all borrowing really is. And that what you needed was a single history that everyone could agree on by backing it against proof of work, and that the Bitcoin mining process, the net total of all the hash rate, which is almost at 200 petahashes now, is actually the price of fraud protection. That is the net price of fraud protection, is the 200 petahash network. And that is actually orders of magnitude cheaper than the insurance industry that we already pay for. When you go into a bar or restaurant and you pay for things, the merchant doesn't get that money straight away. They have to wait for 9 days to get that money. They may not get the money if the person that paid for it then complains and does a chargeback to their credit card company. Now, if you're a merchant and you get this done to you too many times, especially if you're an online business and it's off-site, the transaction is processed off-site, then Visa will turn around to you and say, right, you can't have this anymore. You've done too many claims of fraud. And this is because there's like I don't know what it is, maybe someone could help us out. I think it's something like a $20 billion insurance industry. A massive, bloated, cash-rich industry that has all this money on deposit. Look at AIG, and they started gambling a lot of it away because they don't give out very many payments because it's not in their interest to do that. It's in their interest to turn down payments. So it's just not a very honest way of running things. Victoria, it looks like you agree.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, even in the Katrina, the disaster with Katrina, all these houses that were insured, right? They're like, no, we're not insuring you against this disaster. And everyone's like, well, what are we paying for insurance for if it's never actually going to come and help us? So I have a question, though, because I did a feature on someone in Canada who just started a trading platform for margin calls. So what are your thoughts on that? Because like he was explaining it, and he's like, well, you could, make a lot of money when you're leveraging my money, or you could lose a lot of money. So do you think this is, good to come into the sphere, or not so good? Is free for everyone to do?
Well, I think go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I think it's free for everyone has to decide for themselves. I mean, it's just our opinion about doubling down on stupid money or whatever it was that Jamie said. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically like all margin trading is basically trading on steroids. It's just how much do you want? You want double, triple, quadruple, or more steroids. Mm-hmm. And you have that much risk. So I mean, it's basically riskier trading, and if you win, you can pay it back, and if you lose, yeah, like you said, you lose big. And I think what we talked about before is just it's fine as long as it's not misleading, as long as that people know a little bit about what kind of risk they're getting into, then it's okay. But basically, it goes back to people are not being responsible for themselves. That goes with cold storage and not wanting to store your own private keys, to not wanting to do your own research about margin trading or trading in general. So as long as the website is not misleading, then I don't see any problem with it at all. But people just need to, realize what's going on when you do margin trading.
And also, we need to stop bailing these people out, because what happened in 2008 is we all gave them our money. They went off to the casino, gambled it away, and then we said, here, have some more money so you can keep on doing it. I think part of what Bitcoin is like, no, we're not learning from the lessons of the past. This is how we should do it instead.
Well, I mean, banking's been acting this way since Andrew Jackson was in power, right? He said, you know, I've seen you guys, I've seen what you do, you speculate on the economy, you divide the winnings, and then when you lose, you bill it back to the taxpayers, like I will route you out. And this has been going on for so long. I was surprised when I was doing research on so many American presidents who were like, banks, like, get out. Andrew Jackson in, banks out. So I think one of the things with people that I meet when they get involved in Bitcoin is they're always interested in the price. How can I make money? How can I make money? How can I make money? And I say, read the white paper. If you can get through that, then you can start understanding Bitcoin, because it's like, it isn't just about trading and making money. It's not just an investment. It's so much more than that. So, but
this isn't just the banking industry either, though. Like, if you look at like the automobile industry, we bailed out GM, right? And now that every car that's going to be recalled from this point on has all been made after they were bailed out. The last recall had almost 1 million cars recalled that were made after the bailout. Those are cars that would not even exist. No one would have to get a recall for those cars had we not bailed out GM.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not real money.
The whole financial system is rewarding people that are bad at managing their finances. The Park Service here in the United States says, don't feed the bears, because the bears will become dependent on you feeding them. Yet people that don't manage their money well and have a large car payment are eligible for food stamps because they mismanage their money and have a larger car payment than they have allotted for food.
Well, I think we see this also. It's a problem of lack of education. I mean, in Canada, we don't get taught basic finance in school. We don't get taught taxes. We don't get taught interest rates. I mean, we do mortgage amortization, and we don't even know what a mortgage is. So there's a lack of education. And there's an obedience level, like in banking. You are taught to sell these crappy investments to make your bonus. And if you don't sell these crappy investments, you don't make your bonus. And your salaries are so low that you either participate in that system obediently or you disengage with the system. And so many people engage in this system where they're giving debt out to people who should not have the debt. These people know that they should not be giving this debt out, and they do it. They do it. And that's like the frontline service industry, and it's the, you know, that obedience test where they shock the guy. They keep shocking the guy because the guy tells them to shock the guy. That's where we're in now. So it's not just these high-level investment bankers. It's everyone down the line who, like an Enron, is not asking why. You know, and
I love that you just brought up the Milgram experiment. We should tell people to go look that up. That's called the Milgram experiment, and this was the discovery that if people are told by a guy in a white suit or in high visibility clothing, where you just assume they've got authority, they will do what they're told to do. So if you tell someone that somebody else is getting an electric shock in that other room, you've got to do it, you've got to do it. People, I think it was like 30% of the participants in the study actually took it to the moment of death. They actually murdered the other person.
Well, it's
just
not
because they were told to.
My manager told me to give this debt out. I'm not doing it. There's no accountability. You have to go home and know that you're giving debt to. I had people crying in my office when I was working in banking because they had more credit card debt than they had salary. And so I'd go and say, can I debt console this woman, please? Bring it down from 19.99 to 11. No, she should have known what she was doing. So it's like it's a systemic, like the system is broke. We all know this. I don't have to like preach about this. The system is broken, but what I want to do with Bitcoin is, can we educate people enough on why they're not just engaging in this system to trade and make money and like put it back into their bank accounts, into fiat? Like it's yeah, exactly. Here we go. The system, and it's obedience at high levels, and this weird idea that we have about people having money as being better than other people, or not like. We're more proud of them for doing well. We're not able to jail them in the same way that happened in Iceland. Like I think Iceland is a great example of when people mess up and people are unethical, as we're experiencing like in the end of an empire, this collapse, you know, bloated state, people aren't accountable, you know, they just want to party and obsession with sex kind of thing. We're not holding people accountable, and I think Bitcoin is a total change for that. If we can keep Bitcoin what it's supposed to be, which I think there's a bit of a fourth now.
And that's the struggle at the moment, which I do want to talk about. I just want to correct myself quickly. Sorry, it was only 3% of people that took it to the maximum voltage. So 3 out of 100 people thought they weren't really killing anyone. Of course, it was just an actor in the other room, but they believed that they were killing the other person. 3% of the participants, that's a lot of people. And the only reason they were doing it is because they were being told to by a guy in a lab coat. Right, so just because they looked authoritative, that was what we did. And the other day, I went out for some drinks with some friends, and one of them was an accountant at I don't know, some private equity firm or something, and she was saying how they were buying up a lot of these loans, these bad loans that went bad in 2008. Buying them off of these distressed banks for way less than what they were really worth. Like, she was like, we're going to ROI on a lot of these loans instantly. As soon as we bought them, they're going to start paying out more than we bought them for, because the banks are being told that they've got to do this, they've got to recapitalize, they've got to recapitalize. And one of the benefits of Bitcoin is that everything is open, even the development process. And in fact, this is going to be our next feature. I need someone to make me a graphic that has like developer watch, developer watch, developer watch, like, so it's going to like have some reverb, and there's going to be some cool, so imagine that right now. So this is what I'm going to start doing, okay? We're going to start looking through the Bitcoin developer mailing list on SourceForge. That's what we all need to start doing, because all of the decisions that are being made at the banks are private decisions by people you don't know. Like, did any of us actually learn the names of the people that committed the fraud during the banking crisis? Like, where are the Facebook profiles of these people? Like, who are they? Why don't we go, where did that money actually end up going? Can we not just like knock on the door of the people that stole the money and say, hi, I'm here to get my money back? Like, you stole it and you thought we'd all just forget? And this is what I want to start doing. I want to create a segment of the show where we talk about this. So this week on the developer mailing list at sourceforge.net, you can just Google this, it comes up, it's very highly ranked. And one of the suggestions came up that they should stop using GitHub. GitHub is a centralized social network where coders can commit all of their code. And the suggestion came up from Jeff Garzik, one of the Bitcoin developers, that they should have their own distributed version that runs through the Bitcoin website, because it would be staying true to, you know, Bitcoin's ethos of open source. Vladimir, who is now the lead developer of Bitcoin, has come back and said actually he doesn't think that this is a good idea, just because GitHub is a good compromise. He says GitHub has a low barrier to contribution. Almost every open source developer already has a GitHub account. Switching to something self-hosted makes it more difficult for people to contribute. He also talks about the fact that they're already overstretched resource-wise, and that hosting their own Git repository would require more maintenance. You would have to have a sysadmin that would be looking at it. Now, not that this is like terribly relevant or that this is the most interesting thing we could ever feature on the show, but look at how transparent this is, right? When decisions like this are made in banks, they're made in secret, in closed rooms, by people that just basically bought themselves into that job. Maybe they went to an Ivy League school or something like that. We were having an argument the other day with the people on Twitter I was having an argument with, because I was telling these students that thought they were lucky to get into these universities just how unlucky they were, because they were going to end up in $40,000 of debt for information that by the time they leave is going to be outdated, right? And then you're going to spend the rest of your life in a slave wage job. Now, okay, so let's say you buy your way into a job at a bank and you get up to the top. So what? That doesn't tell me anything very interesting about you. It doesn't tell me how honest you are, just because you managed to play by the rules and you managed how to manipulate a system. So this is about a culture shift, isn't it? This is about saying, I want the world to run like this, where we have a mailing list that is where all your emails are published on a website that anyone can scrutinize. So how do we focus people's attention onto this mailing list? How do we get more people to pay attention to some of these decisions?
Centers of influence, right? I mean, blast it out to people who have, you know, prominence in the industry, who can put their backing behind it. But like on, you know, you were saying earlier about how it's, you know, people want it to be distributed. You know, Andreas Antonopoulos says everything that you conceive a centralized solution for, it is easy. It is, you know, you can do it, but it is wrong, and it will be tougher to decentralize everything and distribute everything. But that's the way you have to start doing it, and that's, you know, I said, why can't more exchanges, like with Mt. Gox, that was a centralized failure on the Bitcoin Bitcoin protocol. But how can these exchanges start distributing and like decentralizing? He's like, it's not easy. It'll take some time, but that is what we have to do, decentralize everything, because we can't trust each other.
Well, the decentralizing the exchanges destroys their profit motive, so they themselves are never going to do that. It'll be somebody who's building out another system like Open Transactions or Ethereum or whatever, where anybody could act as like an oracle. You could come in and build your reputation and sign, be the third-party escrow between the exchanges. Plus, you're never going to have a dollar to crypto exchange that's decentralized. That has to have a centralized place because you have to interface with banks. You'll only be able to do decentralized crypto to crypto. But once that happens, man, shit's going to go crazy.
There already are some decentralized exchanges. It's just that they're not as convenient. It's the same thing as what we've been talking about do we want to be responsible for what we're doing, or are we going to have a trade-off where we use something that's a little bit quicker and a little bit more convenient, but we're going to have to trust a third party, and in this case, exchange. So I can already go on Counterparty, or I can go on BitHalo, and I can do crypto-to-crypto decentralized exchange. Or I don't know if BitHalo is exactly decentralized. I don't want to get into the technical things that I don't know, but there already are decentralized. They work. It's just that they don't work instantly like we're used to on these exchanges. So it's not for speculation. It's not for day trading. It's just for a simple trade. It takes like, I don't know, 15 minutes or a day or whatever, and the volume is just not there yet. And I want to comment quick. I had a discussion over the weekend when I was at Cryptolina with someone that was interesting, and I didn't realize it. And it goes to what you're saying about the Bitcoin code, is that they said that basically Counterparty has been kind of edited out of the blockchain. So they've edited. There was a big discussion about should the blockchain be used for things like Counterparty, and there were a lot of people that said, well, we don't want that, and some people, and they did it anyway. I don't remember the history of who said what exactly, but basically, so I'm over here on SoundForge, and I'm at Bitcoin 09.0, and if you do a little, just use your search function inside your browser, you can find it to the OP_return. So that's the thing that apparently Counterparty needs to function. And it has a comment. I haven't found the exact code line or whatever, but it has a comment that says that that basically, they don't want it to be, they want to change it so that you can't store arbitrary data such as images and forever indispensable text TX outputs, bloating Bitcoin's database. So basically, a lot of people were saying that the Bitcoin is already getting bloated, and the reason that I think it's related is because some of what the blockchain was being used for with Counterparty and some of the others is a decentral exchange. So there's going to have to be, it looks like, either one, there's going to have to be other solutions to these decentralized exchanges besides using the Bitcoin blockchain, and two, maybe someone there are some conflict of interest here, perhaps, that someone doesn't want Counterparty to exist, and some people do. And there could be a kind of conflict of interest, and something is going on there. And like Chris has been saying, nobody really looks at this, or not enough people look at all these details. And you can see a lot of stuff in these details if you can understand what it means on this. I'm on the SourceForge right now.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, one of the interesting things about OpReturn was Jeff Garzik we featured it on the show before, was really laying into the developers at Counterparty, saying, look, you've just come in and you just imposed this on us. We never intended for Bitcoin to be a metadata tool for you to store arbitrary data in transactions. That was an unintended backdoor. So one of the things, and it came up this week on the developer mailing list as well, was the idea that a public key on the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't have to be valid in order for a miner to process it. So you could just make up a key, a public address on the Bitcoin blockchain, send it to a miner, and a miner will process it, even if there's no valid private key to spend it. And what people have been able to do, developers have been able to do, is to be able to use that as a way of encoding intelligible syntax into the blockchain. So one of the early fear-mongering articles was that people were using it to embed child porn into the blockchain. No, you can't embed child porn into the blockchain. What you can do is you can embed a URL, which can be taken down, but you can't embed images in there. It would just cost you too much. You'd be spending tens of dollars trying to encode a JPEG into the blockchain. It just wouldn't be feasible. But you can link to hyperlinks. So one of the interesting things I guess we can talk about is this big post. Let me just get this up on screen share that Gavin Andreessen did a couple of weeks ago, where Gavin Andreessen says something important on Twitter, which was that in order to get the blockchain to scale, we're going to have to find a way of increasing the amount of payments that are allowed into each block. And this is because at the moment, a miner has pretty much full discretion over what goes into each block in the blockchain, which also means that there's an incentive for miners not to process many transactions. In fact, the average block at the moment only processes about 25% of the block capacity, right? So they're putting in, you know, a quarter of what a block can contain. And if we're going to scale the blockchain eventually to the size of Visa, this is actually his block propagation proposal that he's put through. This is a couple of weeks old, this proposal, but the conversation is ongoing, so I thought now would be a good time to kind of bring it up. He actually makes the comparison, let me just find it, to Visa here, where he says that Visa handles 212 million transactions per day, but the Bitcoin blockchain only allows a block size of 1 megabyte. At the moment, most miners are only choosing to process about 200K of transactions because they get paid the same no matter what, and they're incentivized to propagate the block as quickly as possible, otherwise they won't get their reward. So the question is, how do we get the blockchain to scale? Gavin's idea is that we should use something called an invertible Bloom table, and I can give some links down below. There's a really good video on YouTube which says what Bloom tables are. Bloom tables have become more important recently in computer programming because data is getting so large now that if you want to look something up, a good example would be if you want to look up to see whether or not a word exists in the dictionary, because there are 300,000 words in that dictionary, what you don't want is the computer going off comparing your entry with every single damn entry in the dictionary. That will take it a very long time, and if everyone is doing that, you've got a lot of computational effort. Instead, what you do for each word in the dictionary, you create a very discrete, very small binary hash, and then you just compare your hash with that hash, and if it exists in the dictionary, you can say yes, it exists, and then you can go off and do the work. This is already used by Twitter as a way of making sure that you don't get more than one tweet in your stream twice. It's also used in Google Chrome to keep a list of malware and things like that, so that you don't have to keep consulting this large database of bogus websites. And Gavin now thinks that this is a good way of handling the block size on the blockchain, where as a miner, rather than publishing your megabyte block across the network, which may not get found in time, you only publish the header, which can travel orders of magnitude quicker because it's only a few hundred bytes, rather than having to send and I really want to pay tribute to Throwaway 43572 on Reddit as well, because he really breaks it down. I'm going to send him a tip where he's basically saying Gavin has found a practical solution that everyone knew existed to the following problem. Imagine 3 pools, each with 33% of the network hashing power. 2 of the pools find a valid block at the exact same time and send that block to the 3rd pool. Whichever block is the smallest is likely to reach the 3rd pool first. Whichever block reaches the 3rd pool first will have 66% of the network hashing power backing the block, while the losing pool will only have 33% on average. What he's saying is that we need to find a set of rules that all the miners are going to agree to, because in order to put any changes into a hard fork on the blockchain, everyone needs to agree, or otherwise they're not going to point their miners at the new fork of the code. So you're going to have to persuade all of the miners to transition over into this new system, and in order to do that, you need to come up with an incentive structure that is better than what they have at the moment. Sorry, that was quite a lot to take in. So how's the Bitcoin Developer Watch going so far? How's this segment doing? We haven't lost any viewers, so.
Well,
I think it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it so far. I think it's a good thing to go through what these guys are saying, because, like you said, we don't normally get in the backdoor deals of banks. So, and plus, this is how Bitcoin does regulation, right? We don't need no fucking regulators.
The Bitcoin's regulation is in its code and its community. Its code and its community. That's you. That means you have to take responsibility for this. So I know that was a bit of a mindfuck and it was all very full on, but actually I think this is a really interesting problem. Is that at the moment these miners are not incentivized to put that many transactions in a block, which goes directly against what Bitcoin is, which is a payment processing system.
Yeah, regulators.
Yeah, Jamie.
What about the transfer fees? I was reading about the transfer fees this morning because I just got my full node of the blockchain running this morning, and was, you know, it's just an Armory wallet, and I finally got the blockchain all downloaded and all of that stuff because I got a spare computer that I just run as a file server here. And I was reading about the transfer server or transfer fees and all of that, and you know, you can't, they charge extra for doing smaller ones and all of that.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where the hell those transfer fees actually go. It never explains who gets them in the end.
The miner does.
Yeah.
The miner that discovers the block gets 25 Bitcoin reward for finding the block and all the fees with the transactions, which means at the moment miners are tending to include transactions in their block that pay the highest fees. The fees are technically discretionary, but they're not in practice because most wallet developers don't give you a choice. Blockchain.info does. I think Electrum may do. I'm not sure. But Blockchain Info does, but Qt doesn't, and neither does Multibit.
Well, yeah, I had it where I've tried to do zero fee, and it won't let me send it. Where, like in Electrum, because I was using Electrum up until about a couple weeks ago, and it would say, no, you need to add a fee to this. And sometimes it would let me, though, send it without a fee. So I was just confused as hell why some would let me and some wouldn't. And
Yeah,
if I try to use the blockchain app on my phone, that's really confusing. I still haven't got that figured out.
So I think that we need to rewind this a little bit. We talked about it before. So we had earlier this year, I think in February or March maybe, we had a few blocks with single-digit transactions written into the block. So we had, I don't know, 1, 2, or 3, and a few blocks, and they were able to solve a block. And basically, what it is that the miners are not obligated to write the transactions into the blockchain. That's the reality. And the reason that they're not writing so many in is because they can be maybe a few milliseconds quicker in solving when they don't include so many. And or it's about the fees, the transfer fees that we talked about. So on one hand, they should be incentivized to include the transactions because of the extra fees. On the other hand, they have to balance that, and they say, okay, wait a minute, I figured out a way to write a really small amount of transactions into the blockchain. I'm going to get 10 millisecond advantage over the other pool, so I'm going to go with that until the other guys figure out what I'm doing. So it's just, kind of like a competition of power and also tactics. So that's the tactic about how much should I include a lot of transactions with a lot of fees, or should I try to solve a block without a lot of transactions and not a lot of fees, but I'm going to be a little quicker. So that's the kind of game that some of the pools are playing with each other. And yeah, the incentive system needs to be looked at. If it's this Bloom thing or whatever other kind of systems, it needs to be. Some people are even talking about getting rid of proof of work altogether in the long run and doing proof of stake or something else. I mean, yeah, you have to talk about, if that's good, if that's possible, if we as the regulators of Bitcoin are gonna go along with that or not. But it looks like the incentive system is not working as we want it. And as Chris, as you pointed out too, you see how the incentive system works for the difficulty increases, that people try to play the system of the difficulty increases. And this all goes back to the incentive system, basically. So that's where the discussion needs to start, with the incentive system and how how that's going to work.
And what I understand from talking to a miner last week is they have automatic software now for these multi-pools that figures out what is the most profitable coin, or whether it's Bitcoin or an altcoin or a combination of them at the moment to be mining, and it mines those for whatever period of time that the software calculates is the most profitable, and then it will jump to whatever's the next most profitable. So you got these miners that are hopping in between all these different altcoins and Bitcoin, mining all these different ones, and it's, you know, it's all about profit, and it's a fraction of, you know, a fraction of a penny to us means a lot to a miner.
Yeah, it's about money is about the way we relate to scale and distance, right? And I've said this before. And one of the interesting things that Gavin is pulling up on the GitHub thread. Let me just pull it up. I want to try and keep this as interesting as possible for people, because I really do want people to pay more attention to this. So Gavin is actually saying, look, one of the things here is that we've got to learn how humans actually behave, not the way we want them to behave in an ideal situation, but how they actually behave in the real world. And then we need to put a proposal to the existing miners and the existing peers on the network, and we need to say, does this work for everybody? If we change it so that now, rather than publishing the entire block to the network in real time, you're only publishing the header, which can travel a lot quicker, and then eventually when the block catches up, people say, oh yes, I knew this was coming because you already forewarned me. Is that something you can all agree to? And it's a very interesting problem. Bitcoin is like a giant exercise in understanding human nature. It's almost like, as a period of history, we're going through this kind of self-reflective exercise where we're all just taking stock of how we really behave and not how we wish we did in an ideal world.
Well, the first, in the abstract of the white paper, it talks about going peer-to-peer away from third parties. And what I'm seeing, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have these hubs that are mining, that are third parties that like power and like profit, and so how is this different? And that's what I'm concerned about. And when we have people who are in charge of paying the core development team, you know, who have questionable morals, not gonna lie, how is that different? And that concerns me. Like, I mean, if you go back to the abstract of the paper, it's without third parties, peer-to-peer. So.
Right, no, that's absolutely right. We talked about it before. Theo made a very good point, is that the Bitcoin Foundation do not have the monopoly on paying developers, right? And yet that's what they'd like you to think, right? So I'm just about to pay Gavin Andreessen as a thank you for featuring this post. I already did it for the two Redditors that I quoted earlier on. Like, everyone should be, you know, if I feature you on this show because of some content you put up, I will buy you a coffee or something like that, okay? And then, you know, people can donate to the show, and they know that my donations are actually being paid to the people that help create the content. And this is the thing, is that at the moment, Gavin Andreessen doesn't even publish his Bitcoin address. Can you believe that? Right? The lead developer of Bitcoin doesn't publish his Bitcoin address. He only takes the 200K salary that he gets from the foundation. And what I'm going to propose very soon, or I suppose I'm doing it right now, aren't I, is that what we should do as the World Crypto Network is we should say to Gavin and Vladimir and all the other developers that are currently on the payroll, we will do our own fundraiser for you, and what we'd ask you to do is to subtract the money that you get from the foundation from whatever money we raise through activism on this show and on social media. So if we can actually raise some money for you, would you be happy to say to the foundation, look, you know, World Crypto Network has raised 4 Bitcoins for me this month or whatever, could you just take that off of my salary so that the foundation don't become the piper playing the tune, so that we don't have to run into any kind of conflicts of interest later on? How about that for an idea?
I don't think we need to have them take away from the Bitcoin Foundation. I think that adds incentive for more people to go develop if they're making more money. I mean, they don't need to take a pay cut or take a cut.
Well, they would, on aggregate, they would get the same. I'm just seeing if we can dilute some of the foundation's influence.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, but it's kind of like you could imagine it like how the Bitcoin network is when someone gets 51% and they have the the most influence, either if it's over the top influence or it's just suggested influence. What do you want to say, Victoria?
Well, I was going to say this just comes back to power again, and people with power abuse power, absolute power. Like you use this and you use it in human nature. Humans can't be trusted. The point of Bitcoin is that we can't trust humans because when they get centralized and they get too much power, they abuse it. So I don't understand what the difference is between this Bitcoin Foundation, which is a centralized institution which has business owners buying seats to get on board, paying money to the core development team. What happened to that proposal that person put out? With a decentralized foundation, he wanted to flatten it.
Doug, yeah, that's an Ethereum project, so we'll have to wait for Ethereum to launch in the winter before we see it. But yeah, I mean, it looked promising. But as we've already been discussing in our town hall meetings on Thursday evenings, we can actually do a lot of this stuff with Bitcoin Armory. Like, we don't need to wait for Ethereum necessarily. A lot of this stuff already exists.
Yeah, we already got $40, right? We got $40, and we got to figure out what
we got $40 in 30 seconds. So I said, please don't send any more money to this address because we don't know. We need to practice using it and stuff. So I created live on air, i.e., not under a controlled, calm conditions at all. I created a multi-sig address for 7 people, which is the maximum you can have in a multi-sig. And it was like Derek and Nick and me and also Louis from Thailand as well. And so we got us all together, and we still need to decide, by the way, what we want to spend that money on. And now the audience can donate to an address knowing that this is actually distributed across a range of people all over the world, that that we're not just going to run off with money, that the audience can give us ideas and they can say, right, actually, Chris, I really would like you to fund this project that's not getting any airtime right now. These guys, they're working on some great stuff, but they haven't been picked up by the mainstream. They haven't been picked up by the SEO guys. And please, could you help front load that project? And then because 7 of us are involved in making that decision, you can't start colluding.
Well, what was the idea, if I missed it in the white paper, about how these developers would be paid? Was it just supposed to be a voluntary effort to develop the code and submit requests?
I think the Doug system was more based on administration, like what should happen when, which is, I actually don't even know that that's the most interesting part of an institution or an organization. Like, I believe in just solving those problems as they arise. More what I was concerned with the World Crypto Network is how do we create a not-for-loss organization? How do we make sure that whoever commits their time and sacrifice to the project doesn't end up feeling shortchanged in such a way that if you wanted to overthrow, and we use language like, this week we're going to be tyrannized by Derek J, we actually allow that tyranny to be distributed so that everyone gets their 15 minutes, everyone gets their time to shine and to have some influence over the project. And if you don't agree with the way we're running things, then you should absolutely have the freedom to fork this project and rekindle it somewhere else and go off, because the organization isn't there to make you serve the organization. The organization is there to give everyone on the front line everything they need to get their job done.
But with Bitcoin Foundation, how did this even become a concept to pay the core development team?
Because Gavin and Charlie Shrem, Gavin needed to be paid. This was a couple of years ago, and Charlie Shrem and Mark Karpeles got together and they made the Bitcoin Foundation with the main intention of paying Gavin. Now, they had other ancillary benefits too, about educating the public and creating best practices for Bitcoin exchanges. They never did any of that stuff, right? And they did, they didn't do it in time for the platinum member of MT Gox to even learn from some of those recommendations, right? So the platinum member ended up being the second largest bank heist in history, right? Even though one of the explicit aims of the foundation was to advise businesses on best practices for storing their Bitcoins. fucking irony of the century. And then the lead scientist of Bitcoin doesn't even advertise his Bitcoin address and instead takes a 200K salary on an open source project. This is just a mess. And I don't think Gavin Andreessen's a bad guy. Like, I actually think this guy is the best person for the job because he's the most level-headed, he's the most sober when it comes to difficult discussions and hard conversations. But he is not impervious to manipulation or to greed or to, you know, maybe I won't put that feature in if it conflicts with some of the political views of my paymasters, for example.
Well,
and he,
between these corporations who are funding seats at platinum, you know, gold platinum levels, like huge amounts of money, what's the difference between these corporations telling these developers what to do and what's going on in the world that we're trying to leave behind? I don't get it. I just
exactly.
The Bitcoin Foundation is promising them the old world. They're saying that they have control over Bitcoin and they're going to provide you the Bitcoin that you can work with. As we've seen, there's a divide between freedom people and regulation people. The Bitcoin Foundation is the regulation people. Their goal seems to be to deliver Bitcoin to the businesses that want it regulated,
right,
and to develop it at the same time. That's just a side thing. It's the business that's there. You go to their website, it says right away, it says pay us $2,500. It doesn't say be an individual, pay us $50, whatever the individual rate is. The first one is platinum.
Yeah, they don't advertise that as an individual you can sign up for $25. They don't say that anywhere.
I may be taking us way off topic here. It was just a...
No, it's not off topic at all. Everything's on topic as long as it's interesting on this show, as far as I'm concerned.
And it's awesome that but one of the things I don't like as well is we have, there are companies that hire people to work on the blockchain and Bitcoin core devs, but they're also members of the Bitcoin Foundation. Like, I believe BitPay is a member of the Bitcoin Foundation, right? But they also have someone on their payroll who they pay to maintain Bitcoin core and do development. So I'd like to see maybe them split and just be like, we're going to be BitPay, fuck the Bitcoin Foundation, we're going to have our own guys, you know.
Once again, it's trusting humans, and human nature is what it is. We can change the transfer of value, can't change human nature.
Yeah.
I think that's what Bitcoin created, because we can't trust humans, right? They need to get a little bit of power.
Yeah, hang on. We can trust what we do with it. We can trust what we do with it. We can ask, like I'm reading this paper by this sociologist called Simondon, who it was sent to me by one of the viewers of this show. I quoted Noor Satina, who's a sociologist at Chicago University. Turns out that she is the professor for one of my viewers. And so he then DMs me and says, oh, you quoted my professor. And sent me this wonderful paper that I'm still trying to get time to read. And one of the interesting things that this guy brings up is that he says, look, throughout human history, early humans, the earliest humans, their task was to work out how to survive. The next wave of humans came in, and their task was to learn how to communicate. It was all about the formation of language. Then the next wave of humans was all about how we relate to the unknown, and that was the formation of religion, and then eventually the formation of science from the Hellenistic period. And science is all about storytelling. Science is about coming up with a hypothesis and then attempting to prove or disprove that hypothesis through a series of controlled experiments that can happen anywhere in the world, right? So it's about saying, right, I did this by performing sequence A, B, and C, and you should be able to do that whether you're in Australia or the UK or Siberia, anywhere. And so it was a new way of telling a story. And I actually think that we can redefine, you know, how we behave as human beings. And Stefan, who's joined us in the Q&A, is saying, look, traders are going to trade, gamblers are going to gamble. You can't stop human greed. No, you can't stop the greed itself, but you can remold it. You can start to bring in new dimensions to this behavior. By the way, I just wanted to give a hack tip. This was the post I mentioned earlier about half an hour ago, and I said I'd show it, and then I never did. It was on our Bitcoin. I'll leave it in the show notes afterwards. Let's have a serious discussion as to what the fuck is driving Bitcoin price down and what the catalyst will be for an upward trend. It was a very good post, and we had this really level-headed response by Mr. Madden. I actually used some of his points earlier when we were talking about it. So I've just tipped him, and I'm going to continue to tip people who I feature on this show on Reddit. I may not be able to afford a coffee for every single person that I do. I might have to, you know, take it down to 1,000 bits. But I will promise you right now that the more donations you send to me, the more donations I will be able to send out to people that I feature. And this is all about trying to get people, it's not about me just telling you what to think. It's about helping people think confidently and independently for themselves by giving them the best resources. So I'm not telling you that we should use inverted Bloom lookup tables for propagation of blocks across the network. I'm just saying that this conversation is happening over here, and that you can go take a look for yourself and go look it up, and I can then show you YouTube videos that even tell you what the fuck a Bloom filter is, and then you can go, oh, that's interesting. It's a way of accessing big data without having to trawl through all of those gigabytes of data. Okay, that's interesting. And then you can learn and develop your understanding from there on.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
some of the best discussions I've had with people are people that don't agree with me, but I can have a pleasant conversation with them and hear their stand on a view or a topic and learn and make my own decision, or get the resources from them to learn more about it, or they can hear my point of view and make their decision. And that's one thing I like about this show, is we don't always all necessarily agree on everything, but we can do it civilly.
Yes, exactly. Victoria, what were you going to say? Oh, you're muted.
No, I was agreeing. I think that the best thing that we can do for each other is to provide all the information, look at all the sources, and then you make up your own mind instead of, and that's what I love about the internet, is that we're in this new age now where instead of me putting on the TV and watching CNN and seeing what's going on in Gaza, I can go on Twitter and I can see everything. I can see all the sides. I can see the Israeli side, I can see the Palestinian side, and then I can make up my own mind. And so when you have people who come on who don't necessarily agree, it's a polite way to just offer different opinions where you can then take all the information and make up your own mind. And I think we need more of that, but we are becoming more like that as humans, right? Like, we are so much more aware than ever, and we do have more access to information. So yeah, I mean, I'm starting to understand it a bit more. The one issue that I had was, who's paying these developers, and like, what is going to happen if they decide to increase mining fees? Who's benefiting from that? So, but I think we kind of answered that a little bit earlier.
Yeah. So that was our pilot run of Bitcoin Developer Watch. I'll just end on this one from Peter Todd, who's a controversial figure in this space, who hasn't yet had a reply, but he's commenting on a lot of the cloud hashing that's taking place, and he's saying a lot of companies are selling cloud hashing, but there's no way to prove whether or not they're actually paying you based on real hashing, or whether they're just reusing profits. So they're just recycling people's money. So they're taking your money and then they're paying other people with the money that you paid them, and then just saying that it's come from the hashing. This is a classic kind of pyramid scheme, right, where you pay new people with old money. And actually, this is a really good point, where he says that we could set up a system where these services could actually publish cryptographically, without exposing the identities of any of the people on board, how many mega hashes they had. So when they discover a block, they actually publish that they discovered the block and that these are all the people, and they can use something called a Merkle sum tree in order to do that. And you don't necessarily have to understand this in depth right now, but just be aware that this conversation is happening over here on SourceForge. I'll link this in the comments and description below, and you can actually take part in it. And it's only like a Google search away. It doesn't take you as long as you think to learn a lot about these serious issues. And let's face it, if you want a job in the next 10 years, you can't beat learning about development. Right? If you're learning about software development, you are going to have a job in the next 10 years. Even if you don't know it well enough to code, you know it well enough to talk about it, you can still become a sales engineer, or you can still become an advisor to someone. Right, yep. So what's next? What are we going to do? It's 6 o'clock here in UK time. We have one question from OpB, who says, I've noticed that PandaCoin is announcing in-browser mining. Do you think this could be a way to lower the barrier to digital currency adoption? It would, if only it weren't for pesky botnets. If you can run the mining in your browser, it means someone can write a piece of malware to hijack your browser and start mining, but then send those bitcoins to your address. So yeah, it's a lovely idea in theory.
I don't even think that's new, Chris. I think that's been around for like a while. I remember seeing...
Yeah, Litecoin did it originally.
Yeah, I think that's something that's been around for a long time.
Mintcoin recently had in-browser mining, and it was like a very easy to mine coin. And again, I thought PandaCoin was already dead. So is this one of the other Panda coins? Not like There was 2 panda coins and one of them
You can't really
died.
kill a coin though. This is interesting. They end up becoming zombies because the blockchain never dies. Like if 2,000 people have all got a copy of the blockchain on their computers across the world, you can't really kill it.
That's Kanye.
You know,
But like
it
I
just
said,
ends up becoming a zombie.
yeah, all these altcoins. I have I quit downloading all the wallets for a lot of those altcoins. I tried them out for back this spring when there was the big altcoin boom, and quit on them. But now, like I said earlier, that I got my full Bitcoin blockchain running, and that's the only one I'm going to bother with now.
So let me just look through the Q&A.
Well, I wanted to make a comment because Dan Gold, I think, made it earlier, and I brought it up in the chat, is he said he would like to see a service where it's like YouTube that doesn't have the copyright and you can just pay directly for the videos.
Yeah.
And I believe this is something MadeSafe and Storage are both like have in their roadmap for their platforms, is eventually release something like that is a YouTube app for are similar to a YouTube app for storing videos and replaying them over the network and whatnot. And maybe we'll write that down as something maybe we should ask Sean Wilkinson if we get him on next week with his team from Storage.
He was talking about it. That would be possible. But I think someone would have to program the details about how to work it.
I believe they have like proof of concepts or something, or like early prototypes of that on some of their forums.
Yeah, there's a beta out, so it seems to be running, but I can't say much because I haven't tested it myself. But if people don't know, Storage is a pretty interesting project, and it will reward you for basically letting people use part of your hard drive. So we've had this concept before, and it's a decentralized system, etc.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions they would like to ask or know about Storage, maybe you should shoot them or ask them in the comments or shoot them to Chris or ask us on Twitter or something, because we're looking to get Sean Wilkinson and a couple of his team members on Chris Before Coffee probably next week.
Yeah, you can tweet me at Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter. I'm always interested in hearing from you. This is the Storage crowd sale. I guess this is ended now, so we shouldn't publicize that address too much. But they only ended up getting like 9% of that target, but apparently they didn't need it all anyway. So I don't think it's a big deal. I still think it's going ahead. But I really like the idea that, I've got like however many old hard drives lying around, and I can just put them in a RAID, and then I can just leave that running. And I can just have that, serving out for people. If I've got that excess capacity, if I've got surplus disposable hardware, that I can then just repurpose that and have passive income. At the moment, people are trying to make passive income from bogus investments by putting money into these kind of, as my friend Larissa calls it, these kind of branded dreams. Sorry, my camera's gone out of focus there. These kind of branded dreams like altcoins, right? Where everyone gets together and it's like, right, shibes, let's all go and do this publicity and let's get this PR thing moving. And yeah, that's fine if you've got the connections at Wired Magazine and you can get the attention out there. But really, you're not creating anything. You're not creating anything from nature. You're not digging anything out of the ground. You're not coding up any product that people are going to be able to benefit from in the future. You're just getting together because profit is essentially a function of asymmetric wealth. You can't. If everyone made profit all of the time, that's the same as saying no one does. So you've got to be grown up about it, and you've got to think about how long-term interests relate to short-term returns, which is what banking was originally. And I think this whole project is a way of rediscovering that.
Agreed. Very well said.
Thank you. So I guess that's time for final thoughts. It's 6 o'clock. We've also got the Bitcoin talk show later on, Tom. And we've apparently, maybe not, who knows. I'm also on a talk show tonight with Megan Lords as well, because she's got a new show. So I think that's midnight my time or 6 p.m. Central time in America. So any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think Derek J's show is on at, 3 p.m. Eastern time, which would be, what time's that on the West Coast, Tom? 6 p.m.?
I think it's at 12 noon on the West Coast, 3 o'clock on the
I got
East
backwards.
And everyone just needs to start using UTC, and we all just need to stop using our local times.
Yeah,
So we have all this confusion about time, or we should just use the blockchain as a clock.
Yeah, blockchain time.
Blockchain time.
UTC works for me.
If anybody's listening, I would love an app for my phone that is like a block height alarm clock that correlates what time I can set. You know, I want block height whatever, and it'll give me like an average time I should expect that block to come around, and alert me as it gets closer, so I can be like, oh, I'm going to time my day on the block height. Screw regular time, screw minutes and all that crap. I want to switch over to the block height.
Okay, what time is it in the blockchain right now then?
Oh, okay, hang on. Let me just pull that up. Blockchain.info says we are at block height 316,655. It's a good block. Guess where it comes from? Gigahash.io, like most of them do.
No way.
They have most of the hash rate. And yeah, the Merkle root is 6D283D. So good Merkle root. And this one has been found in Sweden, in case anyone's interested.
Oh, good. We know. Send a shout out to Magnus in Sweden.
Yeah. Oh, we should definitely have Magnus on the show as well to do our developer segment as well. That would be really, really cool. So yes, this is the latest block. And so yeah, there is actually a website called bitcoinclock.com, which is pretty good. But someone needs to redo this because it's not granular enough, and so it doesn't really work for day-to-day activities. It only works over the long period of time. But someone needs to create an app that uses the blockchain as a kind of pseudo clock. So any final thoughts before we take ourselves off air, guys?
No, I think we covered it all.
No,
I just wanted to say, if you don't know that thing that everybody's dumping the ice over their head, I guess that's for Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. It's supposed to raise awareness for Lou Gehrig's disease, and I've been wondering why the hell everybody's dumping ice over their head. They're not raising awareness for anything but stupidity.
Well, that's because that's because everyone's trying to raise awareness for themselves. I'm trying to raise awareness right now. For any donations, if you enjoyed this show, please donate. It's now just left for me to say thank you to my guests, Victoria, Theo, Nick, Jamie, Tom, Anna earlier on. Gosh, it's hard to remember everyone's names. Thank you again to Seafarer for your generous donation last week. You can be a generous donator to this show, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.